their fear, it's not a fear of God, it's fear of death.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and the ones that don't have God, you watch them, and they it's just a mass bedlam, and people are running in every direction. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom.
Right.
But they don't fear God. I'm fearing God, and I wised up and said, well, is there a way out of here? And God said, yeah. And I'm like, well, what is it? So he said, I sent my son to die for you, be buried and raised from the dead. It gives new meaning watching all this fear I'm looking at in America and worldwide. That's given new meaning to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm like, we tell people, look, you sin, you spiritually die, and then physical death comes along and you're done forever, wiped off the earth. So
welcome. Today I wanted to talk about Phil Robertson and the impact that he's had on my life. It's been a very positive one. I started watching his podcast when it launched, which I believe was in 2019. It became part of my Sunday routine. I get up earlier than everybody else in my house, and I usually get on my computer and take care of things. And Sundays just became my day to watch. It was kind of like early church, and I'd watch one of the Unashamed podcasts, which is sponsored by the Blaze, which is I'd recommend also. I'm a member there. Anyways, it was him and his sons putting this thing on, and I realized early on that I had stumbled across a person that I guess I would say I've kind of been looking for forever. I grew up without. It was interesting. I grew up with a lot of folks around me that were all very, uh, you know, God fearing and loved Jesus, but never talked about it. I can't remember anybody in my family really ever talking about it. So I grew up loving Jesus, knowing he was out there, but not really understanding the good news that Jesus brought to us. And I think that's why I connected with Phil. He had a very similar story. The way he grew up, he hadn't heard it either, and kind of went off track. And I had a similar path, and he had literally a come to Jesus moment. I had the same thing at a point in my life, and it was the way he conducted himself from that point on. I think he was 28 years old. That really resonated with me. It was amazing, and his authenticity is what really drew me in after I started watching his show and kept me there. His sons are good. It's just not the same. They kind of come across to me as your standard preachers I run into in church, which is I realized after finding Phil, that's why I never really connected with a lot of churches over the years. A lot of guys come across as very car salesman-y, and I don't know. It just church just wasn't really my thing. I just wanted someone to talk to me about, honestly, Jesus and the Bible and get right to the point. And that is Phil. And he's not playing a game. He's not acting. He is 100% authentic with it. And even his sons at times kind of throw me off a little bit. They seem a little, I don't know, a little rule oriented. Phil always managed to redirect the podcasts whenever they would go some strange place back to the Bible. If there was questions viewers had, he always took you right back to the Bible, find passages. He was just super good with that, and he didn't ever seem judgy. He didn't tell you that you should be doing it this way and that way. His sons do that a lot. They're like, "Oh, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. You shouldn't look at this like this. This is how you look at it." Phil just was like, "This is what Paul said. This is what John said. This is what Luke said. Whoever." I loved that, and he was so calm. It was kind of like hanging out with, my dad, or a grandpa, for 45 minutes of podcast. It was great. and I've really missed it. And he's been gone about 7 months, and I've actually gone back and started rewatching all the old ones since he left, which I think was about 7 months ago. It looks like, and I think we all knew this was coming. We kept hearing how bad things were, and I guess the Alzheimer's finally got him, and he died at 79 years old. So I want to just talk a little bit about that today. I don't know how long this is going to be. I don't know if anybody is going to be interested in this, but I kind of wanted to just, I've never really talked about my story, and most people don't know me out there because I'm brand new to YouTube, and I think I've only really shared a lot of this with my wife. But, I had a strange journey that got me where I was at, and Phil sort of took I kind of handed off I had finally ended up, and he kind of, I feel like, has got me over the goal line now, to use a football analogy. Like I said, most of my life I was just leaning on myself. I didn't ever feel like I needed any help with anything. I've always been a pretty independent and stubborn person. And, I did all right most of my life. Everything went pretty well. But there was a point that I got to where I kind of reached a point where I knew I needed help. I kind of call it my bridge moment from It's a Wonderful Life, where he's standing on the bridge saying, "Help me, just show me a sign." And I had gotten to that point. And in my case, it was just business related. It was kind of an ugly situation, and it wasn't going away. And I looked around one night after a frustrating day with this and realized I was kind of on my own. I didn't really feel like I had anybody I could really confide in with this frustrating situation. I had a dopey roommate that was renting a room from me, and I was not in a relationship. And it was, I felt kind of alone and kind of at my wits' end. And I had an old Bible that my mom had sent me, that my grandmother had, and I started reading it that night. I prayed for a couple hours and just talked to God and just said, I don't want you to just solve everything. Just if you can just point me in the right direction, give me some sort of sign. And that was my hope, is that he would do that, even though I felt like I probably didn't deserve it, because it's the only time I had really ever talked to him, when I was on an airplane, like a lot of people probably, and because I hate those things. And that's, I would talk to him every time I did that over the years, and that was about it. And it was really sad when I look back and think about that, how disconnected I was from Jesus. So that's where I was at that moment in my life. I was about 40, what was I, 43, 44, something like that. And so I needed help. I didn't know where else to go, and I started with that. And the only prayer I really had remembered as a kid was, my mom used to do the "As I Lay Me Down to Sleep" prayer. And so I did that and went to sleep. And I got up the next day, didn't really feel any different, just another work day. And I went in, and there was a guy I was friends with, and he really took an interest in my situation. He knew I was kind of down, and he kept asking me questions, and really smart person. He just sort of took the reins and started helping me with some aspects of this scenario. And by the end of that day, I was feeling much, much better. I was still knee deep in it, but I was feeling better. And I was on the way home driving, and I was at a stoplight, and I saw something that caught my eye. It was a ginormous billboard with a person that I had known years and years earlier, that was a lawyer, and saying, "Hey, if you got this problem or whatever, come to our office." And it made me laugh, seeing this person's face, all ginormous, on the side of the road. Kind of made me laugh. Partway down the road, I started thinking, was that literally the sign that I asked for? I mean, is that how it works? I don't know. Is that how it works? Because it literally was a sign, and I'd asked literally for a sign just the night before. So I went home and thought about it, and I hadn't been, I thought, super nice with this person 15 plus years earlier, maybe 20. And so I thought, this person's not even going to want to talk to me. It's probably a waste of time. But I decided I'd go ahead and call them. And to my surprise, they jumped right on the phone and and was very happy to hear from me, invited me down. So I went there the next day, had a great conversation, explained the situation. And this lawyer, a friend of mine, took care of everything within like maybe 3, 4 days. The whole thing had been resolved. And it was a big moment for me in my life. It was one of the most, frustrating and kind of scary moments because there was a lot of weird things, going on with this. And it was just done. All of a sudden, bam, instantly over with. And I, I couldn't help but attribute all this to this moment I had where I asked for help. And I humbled myself and I said, I can't do this. I always thought I could, but I can't. So if you can just push me in the right direction. I felt I got pushed in the right direction because that problem went away. And what was different this time with me, because, I'd asked for things before, once in a while when things were tough. This one was really rough. And what was different was that I didn't change this time. I kept reading the Bible. I kept praying. I kept talking to God. And my whole life felt like it was changing. It's hard to describe, but I just felt better all the time. And I even had a friend that I worked with, another guy, that when I was telling him this, which is probably why I didn't really tell anybody else. 'Cause I told him, he just poo-pooed it. He said, "Oh, this had nothing to do with that. This was you. You made the call. You." I said, "You can say whatever you want, but I was going nowhere quick with this situation, and this is the chain of events, and I believe it, that God's looking out for me." And so there I was, and within, I don't know, it was only maybe a month or two, maybe a couple months after that, I ran into person who is now my wife, completely by accident. We hadn't seen each other in a decade, and just within, I don't know, a year or so after that, I we get married. And now within about 6 months, a few months after that, no, actually, no, I'm getting things mixed up a little bit. We had got a house right before we got married, and about 2 months later, we actually got married. So, but within the years, I think maybe 7 months total from the time I did my praying, about 7, 8 months later, I was living in a new house, really nice one. We're still there now. Uh, I was married to a person with I had 3 stepkids who are great. And I left that job, which I'd been wanting to do. And my business is going really well. It has ever since, which has been about 12 years now. And my life has been completely and utterly changed. And it was during that time, after we got married and settled into the new house, I had been looking for alternate news sources, and I was becoming more interested in faith. And I had I had heard about Phil Robertson, but the only thing I'd heard was what the media wanted me to hear, apparently, which was, oh, he's this awful guy that hates, homosexuals and blah blah blah, because he got in big trouble at one point for saying that, God considers that a sin, which was in the Bible. He was just quoting the Bible. So I just had always kind of in the back of my mind thought, oh, he's just kind of this crazy old man. And he was on the show that I had never had an interest in. And so that was kind of the only thing I knew of him. And I didn't know any of the Duck Dynasty people at all because I never watched it. So I ran across his video somehow. Someone was interviewing him on another channel that I was watching. And I realized, oh, that's that guy. And I'm like listening to him. And I'm like, he doesn't sound crazy at all. He actually sounds like he's really on the ball here with this stuff. And he had this kind of like a real, I don't know, Ronald Reagan-ish kind of thing going on. He was just very calm, very peaceful, and reassuring. And I just found myself sucked in immediately to his message about the good news. And they said, oh, we got this new podcast. So I'm like, oh, cool. So I started watching his podcast. And I realized as I was watching this thing, this is the guy I've been looking for probably my whole life. I have never run across an individual who delivered that message the way he does. He's got all the money in the world. Nothing changed with him when all that happened. He stayed very humble, just kept hunting and fishing and staying away from sin and loving his wife and his kids. And he was a mess. You know, his story's out there. He's told it a lot. There's a movie about it that's really good. I've got all of his books that I've read where he talks about these things, but he was a big time sinner and was kind of a train wreck. And he had gone so far off course that he just ended up splitting up with his wife and really spiraled out of control after that. And then it was his sister that helped him refocus on what was important, which was God, got him in touch with a preacher who helped him get moving in that direction, and it completely changed his life. I think he was 28, he said, and he ended up being the Phil we all know now. And you know, it's a really cool story, and he's helped thousands of people, you know, come to Christ. My one regret is that I'd always wanted to take a trip there and get baptized, because I hadn't, you know, I was a little kid when we got, I don't even remember it when I was a kid doing that. I just thought that would have been the coolest thing, and I kicked myself for not just doing it, you know, because that window is now closed. I wish I had taken advantage of it, at least to get to say hi to him, if not getting baptized by him, and meeting him. Because my feeling is that, and people can argue this probably, and I'm sure some would, that I believe he is the most important Christian on this planet since Jesus and the apostles. I don't think there's anybody that brings to the table the things that they did in such a humble way. You know, his whole message was about love and gentleness and forgiveness. And watching him every week, I started off the next week. It just felt like, you know, like reloaded after listening to him. He's just a great guy, and you know, I'm scared there's not going to be any more like him out there that we're going to run across that are that authentic. You know, that will get you. That'll get you a long way in life, and people see that. Just I never got a chance to meet him, but just watching him through the screen, you can see the authenticity with him. It's the same thing. That's why Trump won the presidency, is because people through the screen, they know we, you know, we're humans and we think we're smart, and we are than most creatures, but we still live by a lot of instinctual things, and we can sense bullcrap when we see it. We can't, and that's why Trump beat everybody he's faced, because everyone against him comes across as fake, like they're trying to pull something over on you. So Trump has that. Phil had that. Ronald Reagan had that. It's very rare. You get these men every so often that have those qualities. And I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to do a little video about Phil, because he's really been a good positive impact on my life. And it makes me really sad that we don't have him down here with us anymore. But I'm so much happier for him that he is where he wanted to be, because he didn't want anybody to feel bad when he passed. He was looking forward to this. I mean, I watched him enough to know that this is a good thing, and I think all of his family sees it the same way. We're just all hurting down here because we don't get to see him, you know, all the time anymore. So I don't know. I hope maybe this video speaks to somebody out there a little bit. And if you haven't watched him, I would highly recommend it to go check out his podcast. It's the Unashamed podcast with Phil Robertson, and it started around 2019. There's several years of it, and they just talk about the Bible and other silly things and duck hunting and, you know, whatever he had going on that last week. And he's just a very engaging person. But I learned so much, and I've been brought so much closer to God from watching Phil, that I just wanted to kind of say thank you to him, and I hope other people that maybe see this, you know, do the same thing. Go out and check him out. So that's it. God bless everybody, and God bless you, Phil Robertson. Once again, thanks for stumbling across my video. I know every channel asks for this, but please like and subscribe. In my case, it's particularly important because by doing that, you are helping to increase the visibility of this channel. And by not doing so, you're literally depriving thousands and thousands of people of the privilege of listening to my deep insights and charming commentary about society's most interesting topics. So do the right thing, help save humanity. Godspeed, and God bless.